But for the people who subscribe to me or whatever just to hate on my tweets, yeah, those people are followers. I would say they're fans. I always thank them for retweeting my stuff. I always thank them for following me because they hang on my every word. But it's a fun go. I definitely enjoy myself
And what
on
percentage
X.
of those hate followers do you think are black?
I don't know, but the majority of my DMs, the ones who DM me and they're like they can't even really like type. They're just like, oh, they're black. So I always figure, you know what, I'm doing something right. If I'm pissing people off, I'm doing something right because the truth has to make you a little bit angry in order for it to really take hold.
Hello, Culminators. Thank you once again for joining us. And thank you for today's guest, who has been very patient with me. I have let him down a couple of times on scheduling. But a patient man is what you want in a New York City police officer. And that's what Zeek Arkham is. Now, you, like many people, might know of Zeek from X. His pronouns are bra and brother, host of the Reasonable Suspicion podcast, professional roaster. I assume he means coffee. I don't know what, or he's going to tell me what it does mean. And he considers himself a conservatarian. And it's an interesting place to be, I think, to be a cop and to be a black man, to be a big ass black man. And I was preparing for this interview, as I so seldom do. And I came upon this interview with Chad Prather and realized that Chad had already done the interview I wanted to do. So luckily it was 6 months ago, and things have happened since then. And plus I'm a little bit different flavor from the flavor of Chad Prather. So maybe and unlike Chad, I'm a New Yorker. So I think Zeke and I will have lots to talk about. Zeke, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So you kind of came onto my radar screen within the last year or so. And it was just, I think this, to Twitter's credit, I have to admit that when they started defaulting to the For You view instead of following view, I started noticing people who I wasn't following. I mean, sometimes the people you're following will bring people to your attention, but I started seeing your tweets. I said, this guy is based, and and your profile is such that adds an extra dimension to what you have to say, and especially as a New Yorker, as I mentioned, and someone who talks a lot about the decline of the quality of life in the city over the last few years. I follow you because it seemed to me that you really do have something to say. You're also very, you say it like it is. You don't mince words. How long have you been on X?
This is actually my second account. I had a account before that I really didn't use. I would tweet every now and again, and I didn't really use it. I think I got to about a rousing 100 followers, and I said, this isn't really worth my time. So I deactivated that first account, and I was really just kind of annoying my family and friends on my personal Facebook account with all my political commentary. So I guess someone got tired of me doing it. They pulled me aside and said, you know what? Why don't you have a lot to say. Why don't you bring this to a broader audience? Why don't you jump back on Twitter and why don't you do your thing there? So I said, all right, I'll give it another shot. And I think this was, I want to say 2018. I'm not sure.
Looks like it was February 2019. So that
yeah. Okay, so February 2019. Right. So I got back on, and I noticed that no one really had my perspective. Here I am, a black dude in New York. I was born and raised in Queens.
Which neighborhood?
Jamaica Queens. And
There's a lot of different kinds of queens.
oh yeah, yeah, no, Queens, depending on where you go, is an entirely different place.
So for non-New Yorkers, Jamaica is a predominantly black neighborhood. It is not what you would it is not what you would call one of the luxury. It's not Bayside.
No.
Okay, it's not Kew Gardens. It is a very urban neighborhood, and yet not as ugly as what do I want to say where Archie Bunker lived. Corona. Would you agree?
No, you know what? I grew up on the border of Jamaica and South Jamaica, Queens. So it was definitely not a neighborhood where you wanted to be out walking around after a certain time. So yeah, I would say it was actually a little rougher than Corona, especially when I grew up there. You know, with the crack epidemic and epidemic and all that. It was pretty rough.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. I do want to get back to Queens, but you explaining that you recognize that you could definitely bring a unique perspective. Obviously, you've got a ton of followers, almost 380,000 followers, which is mind blowing. Have you gotten any kind of pushback? I mean, you said you were annoying friends on Facebook, but not the same kind of annoying as a person can do on what we now call X.
As far as pushback on this account, I've gotten a ton of pushback. It always surprises me when people follow you just so they can hate on your posts. Like to me, I hate the word followers. I like saying, I've got friends, I've got associates, because
Right.
I don't like that word followers.
Oh, the first time I heard it, I was really, really put off by it. Yeah.
But for the people who subscribe to me or whatever just to hate on my tweets, yeah, those people are followers. I would say they're fans. I always thank them for retweeting my stuff. I always thank them for following me because they hang on my every word. But it's a fun go. I definitely enjoy myself
And what
on
percentage
X.
of those hate followers do you think are black?
I don't know, but the majority of my DMs, the ones who DM me and they're like they can't even really like type. They're just like, oh, they're black. So I always figure, you know what, I'm doing something right. If I'm pissing people off, I'm doing something right because the truth has to make you a little bit angry in order for it to really take hold.
So how about among your brothers in blue? The people at the precinct know that you're an internet celebrity?
Some do. I'm on Long Island now.
Oh, you are
I
a New York City cop. Okay.
yeah, I'm on the island now. I'm pretty far out, and the everyone I work with that has stumbled into my account has been pretty supportive.
Just for non-New Yorkers, people from Queens who leave New York go to Long Island.
Right.
People from Brooklyn who leave New York, because I was born in Queens, but I really grew up in Brooklyn, go to Jersey. So on a map, the distance between where Zeek lives and where I live, it's probably, I don't know just how far out you are, but it's not much more than probably 25, 30 miles. But it's about 7 days travel. It is absolutely impossible to traverse New York City and the Long Island Expressway in anything less than half a day. But
Well, also for people who aren't aware of New York culture, the five boroughs is basically its own state. When you go out to Long Island, that's basically its own state, and anything north of the Bronx is South Canada. So
no, I think I think you have to get out of Yonkers first.
no, anything north of the Bronx.
Really?
So,
That is a real committed New Yorker right there. Because I don't think the rest of Westchester County feels that way about it.
well, it's like I said, the truth has to piss you off just a little bit.
Yeah, well, see, now you've got one strike with me, right? You see, I knew it just wouldn't go that smoothly. So what makes a guy growing up in Jamaica want to become a cop?
Honestly, I have a family that's in law enforcement. My granddad was a New York State court officer. My uncle was a New York State court officer, and I was going to go into that family business. And I'd always,
Explain to people what a court officer is. Obviously, I know that. I don't always know things that people are asked to explain. Often I'm faking it, but court officers, I know.
they're basically law enforcement for the court system. So they're the guys that if you act up in the court and you try to run after someone, they're the ones who tackle you down and make arrests and things like that. But
Bring in the prisoners sometimes.
yeah, bringing the prisoners sometimes, a lot of that happens. Um, but I went to college and I turned into a little bit of a liberal, and I was actually anti-cop for a while. Like I really didn't like cops because I fell into the whole trap. You start talking to people and you think that as a black man you're going to be persecuted by them, especially just because of the color of your skin. And
Where'd you go?
oh, I went to Queens College.
That is a real liberal hotbed. I mean, that all the CUNY City University of New York divisions are, pretty red, but Queens is pretty bad. One of,
Yeah. So I joined law enforcement, and I said I was going to be.
Even though you got that, you had that ideological exposure and it had an effect on you, you decided nonetheless I'm going to give it a shot because
because I said I'm going to blow it up from the inside. I'm going to
huh?
expose everything. I'm going to be the guy who says, "Aha! I've been inside a police locker room, and I'm going to explain to you how it all really goes." And I found out that cops are just like everyone else. They think about their families. They worry about their families. They want to get to PTA meetings. They want to get to their kids' softball game. They want to go out there and they just want to do the best job they can, without getting harassed themselves. And it kind of made me think about a lot of things. And I was still pretty, like, I was really fighting to hold on to that liberal mindset until Obama came into office. And then Obama, I was a hardcore Obama fan when he first came in. I was all about Obama. I proudly went up to the voting machines and I voted for him. And then he started saying a couple things, and I started fact checking him. And the turning point was when he got into it with the Harvard police officer, the Cambridge police officer,
Right.
who went after his friend, and he started saying a lot of things about cops and yeah, Henry Louis Gates. And I'm sitting on, I distinctly remember sitting on my couch. And I distinctly remember saying to myself, I know everything he's saying right now is false. And I know everything he's saying, cops don't do that. Are there bad cops out there? Absolutely, 100%. But the overwhelming majority are great people, just like you and I. So I started really fact checking him. I started really looking into different things here and there. I started reading more. I discovered Thomas Sowell, and I kind of red pilled myself from fact checking Obama. So to this day, I always thank Obama for turning me into the man I am right now.
Very interesting. I mean, I guess you were young enough to still have that plasticity of attitude to open yourself up, but because he thrust himself into the Henry Louis Gates controversy and touched on your identity as a cop, that's when you started asking questions. That's how the illusion of the golden child was shattered for you.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, to this day, I still say his 2004 speech at the DNC is probably the best speech I've ever heard in my life. He's always been a good speaker. He's always been very articulate. He's always been able to express himself the way he wants to. I'll always give him that credit.
Articulate and clean.
Yeah, as Joe Biden said, he's the first articulate and clean. But you know, him saying what he said, and then the people around him saying what they're saying, and then his continued actions over the next couple of years really turned me over to where I am now. And then I saw the documentary Runaway Slave, and after that, I was full bore to the right because everything just lined up with my core based beliefs. You know, I went to church as a kid. My mom is an ordained minister. My mom's a pastor, and my mom used to sort of preach to me and pray for me for a long time. So a lot of my core values, a lot of my core feelings about myself and things I believed in were just confirmed from looking more and more into the right side of the aisle.
So I must tell you, I never heard of Runaway Slave before.
Oh,
It's
great movie. It's a really great documentary. Check it out.
Check it out, folks. Ron Coleman's going to check it out too. The way they describe it on IMDb, a perpetual state of welfare exists in the U.S., creating a form of modern slavery for a large percentage of African Americans.
It was basically the Uncle Tom documentary before Uncle Tom came out. So it really it moved me on to a new way of thinking, and ever since then I've been dyed in the wool, as Frederick Douglass would say, a dyed in the wool conservatarian.
Just to be clear, folks, I'm going to throw this up as well in case you're not. Well, this is Uncle Tom 2. Oh, that is the one, right? Uncle Tom?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. An American
That-
Odyssey.
Last part 2. Uncle Tom 1 is
Oh, there
also,
is. Okay, so there was an Uncle Tom 1.
Yeah.
And but Uncle Tom 2 is good too, I guess.
Yeah, they're both great.
All right. So my must-watch list has been added to.
Sounds good.
And I'm going to check back in with you on X, Zeek, to confirm that I watched them. So this isn't going to be like one of those things with the podcast that we have to have you on again. You never hear from them again, you know. And by the way, why do you agree to, like, what's the benefit to you of doing podcasts?
Honestly,
you're not selling a book. Don't seem to really be, how actively you're podcasting. There isn't even really a link to your podcast on the bio.
I have to fix that. I actually,
but you're not really pushing anything. You're pushing your ideas.
Yeah, I'm talking to people. I'm just getting different perspectives. I'm just getting different viewpoints. I part of my journey into where I am now is I like talking to people. I like talking to people, getting their viewpoints, getting their perspectives. I try to actively look for people who are going to teach me something, teach my audience something. I actively try to look for people who have different perspectives, although I can't seem to really find them. I always have an open invite for someone. I've always said, hey, listen, if you're a Kamala fan, or as I call it, a Kamala file, get on there, prove me wrong. Go in there, talk about your girl, defend her.
They won't do it.
But I haven't found anyone who can really do it. So,
well, there are two problems.
Continues.
Right? One is that they can't actually make the arguments. But the other problem is that there is a rule on the left that you don't appear on right wing or conservative media. It legitimizes the idea that there could be another point of view on topics.
I completely don't understand that. I've been on left wing podcasts.
All right, and there you see that, folks.
there I go.
By the time you see this episode of ColemanNation, you will see that the link on Zeek's bio. That's his homework to me.
Yes.
And he's on Rumble because he doesn't want to mess around with YouTube, and I give him all the credit in the world for that because long story. All right, so yes, it is frustrating not to be. You say two things that I want to expressly agree with. One is that it's frustrating not to be able to get into any kind of meaningful debate because liberals and left wingers won't come on. And the second one is this is a great way to make friends with people that you've only interacted with perhaps on social media, which is overwhelmingly the case with me. And after having one of these discussions, which is for all practical purposes face to face, except no one's buying lunch, when you meet that person in real life, you have a friend. You feel like you do really do feel like you know that person. So I want to get back to now origins to the Queen story. Yeah, do you ever get back to the old neighborhood?
Not. I mean, every now and again I do. Every now and again, I still have family in my old neighborhood. My father's side of the family is from there. Every now and again, like I'll pay them a quick visit because
Jamaica is actually near the courthouse. I mean,
yeah,
that's where the Queens County Courthouse is.
is
Did
it?
you
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
um what's been going on in New York has astonished me, not only because look, I grew up in the 60s and early 70s, and we moved out of Brooklyn when they started busing. And it wasn't a cause and effect, but it's the correlation is more than coincidental. That was the Great White Flight, of course, of the early 70s. And since and then watching from across the river, we saw the great decline of the city in the 1970s. Until Ed Koch kind of stopped that, and I used to watch Kojak all the time. And it was which was really this great dystopian depiction of the hopelessness of New York City. But it used to, when I was a teenager, I'd start going back into the city, and we'd come in through the Port Authority. And you remember what Times Square was like in those days? Well, you don't. You're too young. Times Square in those days wasn't well, a lot more like what it is now, actually. But just strung out people all over, sleeping on the ground. And then there was this golden age from Giuliani through the Bloomberg years, where New York was just unbelievable what it was like. And it looks like you think they've found this solution. They figured out what to do, and then it went right back to hell. What shocked me was during when the riots started, the Floyd riots, and then the Trump and the Antifa stuff. I always figured that one thing that had not that had changed forever was the New York City Police Department. Was that they were known as such a, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the impression I always had was that they were really professional. They knew how to manage crowds and manage disorder. And yes, there had been David Dinkins had told him to stand down during the Crown Heights riots, and he lost his job because of that. And then it just, what did you think when you saw cops being so ineffectual or failing to even try to take action, over the last 5 years in New York as a cop?
Well, I mean, I've got tons of friends over there in the city, and the frustration they feel talking to them is palpable. You feel it on yourself. I'm glad I'm out on the island, but I feel so badly for them. But as someone who grew up in Queens, who still considers himself a New York City guy, seeing what De Blasio did to my city is heartbreaking. I've gone on record to say I think 9/11 by far is the worst thing to happen to New York City. But De Blasio is, if he's not number two, he's somewhere at least in the top five, because you saw like you said, you saw how good the city was during the Giuliani era, during the Bloomberg era. You saw how cops were supported. You saw how tourists felt safe. You saw how businesses were coming to New York City. You saw the prosperity that the city had. And then it's like De Blasio came in and just said, "I'm gonna screw all of this up," and that's exactly what he did. cops weren't supported. Businesses were forced to leave because they couldn't deal with it anymore. The safety standard went way down. Tourists didn't feel comfortable coming to the city anymore. So you saw all this going on, and this is why elections matter, because De Blasio went up against two people who he went up against John Katsimatidis, and he went up against Nicole Malliotakis, who were both way better than him. But he was intent on destroying the city. I was speaking to someone who is a cop in New York City, and he said the main difference between people like Giuliani and people like Bloomberg is that Giuliani and Bloomberg, you got the impression that they truly love the city. They truly love being New Yorkers. They truly love the process, of just New York City and just this metropolitan town.
And certainly Koch,
And Koch as well. Yeah.
He just walking across the Brooklyn Bridge during that transit strike to him was better than if there had been no transit strike at all.
Yeah.
It was just a moment. It was something you lived for.
But De Blasio, he loved his ideas. He loved Marxism. He loved socialism. So he was going to push that more than anything, even if it was to the detriment, and it was to the detriment of New York City. So you have that contrast, and I think Eric Adams right now is trying to bring things back, but he's facing a lot of opposition. So that's just my opinion right now.
Putting aside the indictment stuff, which is, I still think it's too soon to really figure out what's going on there. But your inclination is that Adams, who is a former cop, has the right inclination. Has the right idea to the extent that that a Democrat politician can.
Yeah, that's my opinion from what I've seen. And listen, I'm no Adams fan. I really don't like what he did as far as the COVID mandates. I'll call him on that every day. But I think he had the right motivation and the right ideas as far as what he wanted to do to bring the city back to where it was Giuliani era, Bloomberg era, even. So
the thing is, you mentioned the two people who ran against De Blasio. Their problem was that neither of them, John Katsimatidis, John K. He's a fascinating character, but neither of them had the stature of Rudy Giuliani, who had been a successful federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Notwithstanding that what de Blasio did after the decline that was obvious to almost everyone after his first term, he was reelected. And I think what a lot and also, I mean, the city council has become really, really unmanageable. So you have to wonder whether there is any political solution in New York when the political, it has become much more of a one, neither Rudy Giuliani nor Mike Bloomberg was much of a conservative Republican. I mean, Rudy moved, I think, substantially to the right over the last 10 years. Bloomberg just wisely, just as Ed Koch was a what do they call it? He had the nomination of both the Republican and Democrat parties when he ran for re-election, because he was just so widely popular, and he was a relatively conservative figure. Bloomberg was what we used to call a moderate Democrat, and he ran as a Republican because he came from the outside. I don't know if is there a, in your opinion, looking from Long Island, is there any way politics in New York City ever gets straightened out enough so that it can fix itself?
I don't think so. Yeah. I think anyone who could
what
fix
changed?
it.
What is it that changed?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that. I honestly don't know. I think people though who want to change or have the capacity to vote to change, or they're all moving. You know,
I think that's
there's
the
a
answer.
huge migration coming, you know, from New York to North Carolina to Florida to Texas to, you know, they're all moving to
The
Tennessee. They're all moving.
the middle class has left. A lot of wealthy people looking at the tax burden who are above middle class, and to live a middle class lifestyle in New York City means to be doing quite well.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit depressing. I mean, I do sometimes kind of have this idea that, well, it will just have to go all the way to the bottom again, the way it did under Abe Beame, and, until people realize that they're just making it worse. But like Detroit hit that about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And it does appear that there is some improvement in Detroit, but there is no white middle class in Detroit anymore. It's an entirely black city. Um, what is it with the black political class in this country that has resulted in such poor, consistently poor, certainly in urban areas, results? What's going on with these guys?
Brainwashing, plain and simple, is brainwashing. The Democrat Party has convinced a lot of black voters that the Democrats are their savior, that they can't do anything without the Democrat Party coming along and helping them. This is what I rail against on X on a daily basis. You know, the black folks are in a position right now where the Democrat Party takes their votes for granted. They know whatever they do, black folks are going to vote for them. Obama didn't do a blessed thing for black folks, and black folks love him. You
It's the
know,
same thing with liberal Jews.
yeah.
There's no their religion is the Democratic Party. Do you I mean, apparently there is a movement, especially among black men, towards Trump, and not that he's going to get anything like the majority of black votes, but there's more visibility online of guys, not only like you, but guys who are not as prominent as you, but little snippets, TikToks, and guys saying this is not working. We've really got to start thinking for ourselves.
I think there's a movement with black folk in general, men and women. I would say black men are a little bit more awake. You know, they're coming out of it faster. But I'm seeing on social media, there's black men and black women who are now looking at someone like Kamala Harris and saying, this isn't working for me. And then you've got the hardcore leftists who are like, I don't care what happens. This country can crumble to ashes. I'm voting blue no matter who. So, I mean, it's brainwashing because, like I said,
I mean, the biggest component of the brainwashing of all, because politics and policy can be complicated, and lots of people, lots of races can let their feelings rather than their intellects govern them. But the amazing thing to me is that people were so easily brainwashed into the belief that Donald Trump is a racist. And you and I know as New Yorkers that there was never a hint of such an accusation until he was in a position of in 2016 of getting the Republican nomination. He would never have lasted 10 minutes in the real estate business if he were actually a racist. And yet he flourished for many years. Not everything that he touched turned to gold, but he was, he did pretty well. How did everyone just buy that just so easily?
because the propaganda machine is real. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at what's going on even now with this election. You've got Project 2025. Trump has said over and over again, that has nothing to do with me. I don't support that. The Heritage Foundation has come out and said, listen, he doesn't, we put that out there. We suggested it. He said, no, we have nothing to do with it. They've said this over and over again. But Kamala Harris continues to say, oh, he supports Project 2025. And people, you got Democrats who are like, yes, Project 2025, Trump supports it. And no matter how much Trump says, I don't support it. It's not a part of my plan. I have an actual plan, Agenda 47. It's right here on my website. But Kamala Harris keeps pushing it. And you have Democrats who keep pushing it. The propaganda machine is real.
Now let's talk about one more thing, which is related, and that is what's going on with the blacks and the Jews. When you were growing up in Jamaica, how much on the brain of you and your friends was were the Jews? Was that a thing?
No, not at all. Listen,
I mean, you went to church. What you went to? You went to, I assume, a Protestant church.
yeah.
Black Protestant churches historically have had a thematic connection with the children of Israel. This is certainly 100 years ago that was a very strong theme because of the slavery connection, but much more much more than mainline Protestantism in the American upper class. Blacks and Jews had decent relations, and things. I mean, since when are blacks so concerned about Palestinians? Palestinians, really?
No idea. Again, I wish I had an answer for you. All I can tell you is when I went to Queens College, I had a ton of friends of the Jewish faith, and they embraced me as a brother, and I embraced them as brothers. And when Jewish people were getting attacked about a year or two ago, there was a temple near where I worked. I would travel out to Queens, and there was a temple near where I had a couple projects going on, and I used to volunteer to walk some of the elderly home just to make sure they got home safely. So I don't know. I can't tell you what happened. All I can say is just reiterate my answer that the propaganda machine is real. If you convince people that they're oppressed and that they have a kindred spirit in other people who are supposedly oppressed, you'll get instant support from them because misery loves company. I've said from the start, I stand with Israel. I think Israel has a right to their autonomy. I think Israel has a right to defend themselves, and I'll always believe that. So, like I said, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, man.
Zeke, do you think you're making any? You think you're changing any minds? You're getting across to people? I mean, you wouldn't keep obviously doing it if you thought you're wasting your time.
No, I've actually had a few people who I know personally who have said to me, "Your posts and your commentary has helped me to think things differently." I had one person. I used to work with her. I saw her as a little sister. I've always had a lot of love and respect for her, and she was hardcore white oppression. She was hardcore. Wore her skin color as sort of a badge of honor, and she stumbled across my Instagram page, and she saw my commentary, and I saw Blexit had an event a year ago in Queens, and I saw her there, and she came up to me, she gave me a big hug, and she said, "You were the catalyst to help me start thinking differently. I wouldn't be at this event if it weren't for you." And I'm not an emotional guy, but
You are too. You are too. I know it's bad for business, but you are. Let's not kid ourselves. There's Zeek on Insta. He's got a healthy following, 53.8 thousand followers.
But
So
yeah,
that was a meaningful moment too.
That touched me. Yeah, that touched my heart. Especially because, again, this is someone who I've always had a lot of love and admiration for. I've always seen her as a little sister, and the fact that I was able to sort of change her mind really meant a lot.
Changing minds. They just have to be open and willing to listen. And I have seen it happen too. I don't know if I've ever had anyone who came up to me and said I changed his or her mind in quite profound of a way. But it's one of the things that you really have to acknowledge, Zeke, is that people are not willing to. Not people are not willing. it is hard for many, many people to put their names behind their ideas. They think they're going to be fired. They think they're going to be, you know, socially abused or worse. So people like you, especially in a community, I mean, look, among Orthodox Jews, to be a conservative is not particularly interesting. But in your community now, when you say most of the cops in your precinct of all colors are probably conservative, right?
Yeah, the overwhelming majority of cops you'll find. I actually I work for a statewide agency,
Ah,
so I'm all over the place. But most of the cops you find are definitely more conservative, just because I mean, the more you're out in the street, the more you experience the good, the bad, and the ugly of life. You
you're
know,
mugged by reality every day.
exactly, exactly. It hits you right there in the face.
Zeke, I thank you again for your patience. Just background, this is the 17th time that we scheduled this interview, approximately, more or less. And it was never Zeke's fault that we didn't make it. He's a real solid guy. You can find him here on X. That's where he does most of his magic. Okay, with that massive following, and you can in fact find him on RVM News. And I showed you his Instagram. Anything else we should know? You're going to be doing anything, writing a book or your HBO comedy special or anything like that that we should talk about?
Maybe I'll write a book eventually, but no time
I'm
soon.
writing several, and none of them ever gets finished. Zeke, thanks again for joining and for culminating with us. And thank all of you for dropping in on our conversation. Have a good day.
Thank you.